Shalom, shalom, Yasharal, and welcome to episode 10 of the Believer's Testimony series. Today we have a special testimony brought to us by a fellow believer. Some of you may already be familiar with this brother. His name is Dana Stevens. Now, Brother Dana is a fellow believer in Yah and Yahushua. He lives and works in the inner city of Chicago. Now, I've pieced together some segments of a larger message that he gave at the Photo Messianic Assembly. What makes this brother's testimony so special is, as you will see, several years ago he was attacked by a group of young black men, and he was beaten very badly. Now, that experience would leave most people broken and bitter. Some might even develop a deep hatred and resentment towards blacks after going through that experience. But the Most High used this negative experience to soften Brother Dana's heart toward the black community. And it also made him start asking questions about why has this community been hated, ostracized, and oppressed, especially in this country, for so long. I pray that this message will be a barakah for you and yours. Shalom.
A little history about me before we begin. I grew up in southern Minnesota. I grew up out in the country, a town of about 4,000 people. There was not a African American or a black person within miles from where I grew up. The extent of the cultural diversity of St. James, Minnesota was two Mexican families, the Gallegos family and the Hernandez family. And then every year, we would get between 2 and 4 foreign exchange students from someplace in Europe, mostly France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, or England. So that was the extent of the diversity that I grew up under. I grew up not in a family that would have looked out the window and saw one of you being lynched and would have cheered, but would have said, close the window and get away from there. I have an uncle, and well, today with the journey God has brought me on, I have several family members, aunts and uncles, that will not even speak to me. They have blocked me from all media, and they have blocked me from their cell phones, and have asked me not to humiliate them and disrespect them in my ignorance and in this journey that I am now on. So I grew up there. I was going to be a small animal vet, so I went to a 2-year school, and I fought a little bit with Yah. I radically got saved, actually, the summer before my senior year in high school. Some friends had invited me to go to this Christian outdoor concert, and so I went. I grew up religious. I grew up where we went to a Lutheran church where we talked about God, but God and everything about Him stayed in the church. See, us white folk think we're good. So God is honored, I know, to have us white folk, walk with Him. I mean, I know us white folk are good people. And so God is just our buddy that we walk alongside, and He is just pleased with us. And the few things that we do bad, hey, we're human, but we're not like the rest of y'all. So it's kind of that in our culture growing up is, God is going to be, Yeshua sitting on His right hand, God the Father, and us white people. And we will judge the living and the dead. It really is to that point. So I radically got saved. I just remember sitting there and then hearing the voice of God, which I didn't recognize quite at that time. And the only way I can explain it is sometimes when you get up real quick, you get this little lightheadedness. And that came over me, and the next thing I know, there's like 30,000 people there. So I was like in front of the stage. I don't know how I got there. I don't remember any of that, but I remember at the time when I came about that I was on my knees with my hands up, pleading for this God to come into my life. And that radically changed me from that day. I began to read the Word of God. I began to seek Him and who He's all about and what it's all about, having a relationship at that time with what I knew was Jesus Christ. And Yah had always put in my heart a sensitivity to underdogs, or to what we would call, or people like the Mexicans in my hometown. They were not really embraced. They were tolerated, but they were not embraced as one of us. We'll embrace you as long as you're few in number and you do things our way. Once you grow a little bit bigger, you'll see the true hearts of white folk come out. So that impacted me. And so on the way back from that church, it was a longer church service. I couldn't believe it. Us white folk have a church that should not last more than 60 minutes. And if it does, that pastor may not have his job the following year. Because the roast is in the oven and I got things to do and places to go. Because again, remember, I'm doing God a service by coming and worshiping Him. I'm doing God a service by coming in and reading about who He is. Not that God, is the one that's my way maker. If I do good, my grandpa told me, if I follow the 10 Commandments and I do good, I will have a good life. So those of you that don't have a good life, it's because you are not following the 10 Commandments and doing what God had told you to do. It's your fault. So as we walked out, it had snowed lightly. So there was a couple of inches on the ground. And so we were walking single file in a trotted path. And my two friends were in front of me, and we're walking like this. And all of a sudden, I saw 5 young black men about a block in front of me. And so guess what? My mind went straight to what I was taught growing up. And I thought, oh my gosh, are they gang members? Are they drug dealers? What are they going to do to me? But I also believe that when the Word comes to us, we can allow it to be planted in our lives, or we can allow the birds to take it away, or we can allow the rocks and other things eventually to remove the Word that Yah's planting into us. And so I said no. At that time, I was like, no, God, I'm not. If those were 5 white guys, I would not think that. We didn't have cell phones back then, so I couldn't dial 911, for help. So I had to endure it. And so as we were walking, they started picking up these ice chunks. And I thought, being from Minnesota, I'm a professional snowball fight man. Using ice chunks is not a friendly battle. Whoever is on the other end of those ice chunks probably won't be your good friend when you're done with your snowball fight. But they picked up these ice chunks, and again, these 2 friends of mine had been attending this church, one for about 3 or 4 years, because he was a senior, and the other one for 2 years. I was a transfer student in. So I transferred in as a junior. So I was, like I said, brand new. This was in March of 1994, just after I had arrived to Chicago in January of 1994. So we're walking, and these guys, approached us and said, hey, what's up, what's up? And the 2 guys in front of me were like, hey, what's up, what's up? So I was like, okay, well, that's what I have to do. So when they got to me, I said, hey, what's up? Well, it was at that moment that I realized what those ice chunks and who those ice chunks were for. They were for me. Within minutes, I found myself in the snow with a busted lip and a bloody nose and black eye and bleeding in the back of my head from the ice chunks that they smacked. Wounded spirit, confused. And the 2 guys that were with me, they were still walking. They were still walking. Until the last guy gave me a kick. And he said, welcome to racism! And they ran off. That's when my 2 friends turned around and saw me lying in the snow, bloody and beaten. That was the pivotal point that Yah used to change the whole course of my life as to where it is today. Those words from those 5 young black men, welcome to racism! And that beating is what I believe in the depths of my heart that Yah used to choose me or to call me to do what I'm doing today, 23 years later. And what the Lord did, yes, I went through some questions, riding on the subway back, bleeding. People were like, what happened to you? There was some anger for a moment. But I said, God, help me. Help me to understand why, or the pain behind those words and actions of those 5 young black men. I didn't know what I asked God at that moment because I didn't know the extent of oppression and racism that lies in this country. And so when I gave Yah permission to help me understand the pain and what that was meant behind that altercation, I, representing America or white America, the past 23 years, Yah has brought me through to find out and to learn the extent of oppression that this country has always had to keep you, black Americans, down. So I began to ask God, though, in my spirit, I still was like, we dislike women when they want equality. My grandpa, who's no longer around, he said one of the things that caused America to go down was the day that we allowed women to have their rights. The day that women began to have their rights was the day that America started going down. That's how deep that white supremacy and control is. But I said, okay, we dislike women's rights. We dislike, let's say, Mexicans and other, minority groups. But we hate you. We hate you, blacks. We hate you. And I said, why? Why do we dislike other minority groups, but we hate you? And I would say about a year ago, the revelation of Yah came into my spirit. And he said, that's because they're my chosen people. And that is what has opened my eyes to know that you are his chosen people. You are the ones that the word talks about, that were put on slave ships in Deuteronomy 28, carried over to a land that was not your own, to where a language was spoken that you did not know, where you were stripped of everything about you, your names, your heritage. Why did they make these men get naked? Because it takes away all their dignity. When you stand naked before somebody, you are completely exposed. Your dignity, your value is stomped on. They do that in the prison systems all the time. They walk up to those. I was a chaplain at Cook County Jail for about 16 years. And they called them black leather glove guys. And they would walk up there and ransack their jail cells, rip up their family pictures, destroy their dignity, would strip them naked, and then walk them through the prison down to like the gym and have them stand naked, where dogs would sniff the insides and the outsides of these men, destroying their dignity, their value as humans. But with that, tonight, there's also the promise of Deuteronomy 7:6. For thou art a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God chose you to be his people, his treasured possession from all the nations on the face of the earth. That is why you are so hated, not even just by white America, but by the world. You are the remnant of his chosen people. And that my life now, God, and that's where I'm switching from God to Yah and from Jesus Christ to Yeshua. But now I understand when he first brought me also into the inner city, he told me that you will be like my Joshua. Don't be afraid of them. And I'm going to be honest with you. The first thing I was afraid of was the guys out on the street. And he said, don't be afraid of them. No one will ever be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. But see, now I understand the fullness of what Yah spoke to me back in 1995, shortly after I had that incident. Them were not the guys out on the street. Them are my ancestors. Them are my people. Them are the ones he's saying I do not need to be afraid of. That he will allow me to be used as a vessel, to be a mouthpiece, to speak truth from the other side, from your enemy's side, the truth of who you are. See, it's one thing when you tell each other we're chosen. You know, and somebody asks, well, there's been black brothers and sisters that have been saying this for years, and so why all of a sudden now this white man comes and says it? The reason why I believe it's a little different, not because I'm all that in a bag of chips, as we say, but it's one thing when everybody's sitting in the pit to encourage each other in the pit that we are gods and we're going to get out of this pit. But it's something when a master who puts you in the pit looks down and says, I want you all to know that you really are God's chosen people. And you're coming up out of this. There's the difference. I shouldn't, the only person that would reveal that to somebody on that side of the family that hates you would be Yah. That's why my family now despises me. They think I'm lost it. They think I'm crazy. Sometimes at first I thought I was crazy, but I know the voice of my God. I know the voice of the master that I serve. I know his voice, and it answers so many questions to why you, as my black family, are suffering so much. It's because you're his. But after 23 years of living in the lives of these young people, seeing how broken they are, and see, when I came into the inner city, I knew I had a lot to learn. Sometimes when you are already in your culture and you get older, you maybe don't sit down with the kids. Sometimes, you know, my parents don't realize that me growing up was very different from them growing up. And until they come and sit down with me and hear my heart and my struggles and my pain, their compassion is not there. They think it's excuses. And so when I know I was different and I knew I had to learn, I sat down with these kids and I share with them and I talk to them and now they come running to my office. Mr. Stevens, you need to talk to my friend. They want to commit suicide, Mr. Stevens. And I told them if they come up to Mr. Stevens, his room is filled with peace. That's not my peace. That's the peace of Yah that I serve. Mr. Stevens, I don't want to be in the lunchroom. I just need some peace, Mr. Stevens. Can I just come and sit in your office and eat my lunch, Mr. Stevens? I have kids all day. One little kid came in, and he had his head down, and he said, yeah, Mr. Stevens. I said, what's wrong, James? He's like, oh, Mr. Stevens. He says, you know, you don't like me. I said, James, what do you mean I don't like you? You don't like me. I'm not your favorite. You don't like me. I said, James, come here. This is between me and you. I said, first of all, I like all the kids in this school. But I said, the secret is you're one of my favorite. I said, why do you think you're up here with lunch with me all the time? Got this big smile. He put his head up and he said, thank you, Mr. Stevens. And he ran off and went to class. This was a kid that was out of control 3 months prior to that. Now was a kid that the mom and dad came in and said, what has happened to our son? He's changed. And he comes home and he says, Mr. Stevens loves me. I'm one of his favorite. It's that power. Your identities has been stolen. the kids and the young people and those that are not aware of the truth. It's been stolen. Hasn't been taken. My ancestors stole it from you. You had no part in giving up or freely giving away your identity. It was stolen from you. So your identity, you as a group of people, you were stolen, not taken. Your ancestors had no part in trading you to my people. We stole you. We took you. We purposefully have done that. But I want you to be encouraged and know that your deliverance is nigh. Your oppression is coming to an end. You are going to receive the promise of your God. He has not failed you. He has not failed you. He has not forsaken you. He has not forgotten about you. It's coming. And I want you to prepare yourselves for that. I want you to go out there and prepare those around you who are still unaware of who they are. I don't care what they're doing right now. We serve a Most High. We serve a Most High that can raise up a Moses, keep him safe. We serve a Most High that can take Joseph and put him from a prison all the way up to the top. So if that same Most High can do all those things, that same Most High can infiltrate our inner cities and transform the lives of those right now that do not know who they are. So I changed from Studio 2911, which came from Jeremiah 29:11, bringing hope, to One Love Society, where Yah has told me that love will never fail. And he showed me over the years what has my work done in the lives of the guys out on the streets, bringing them off the streets. And he said it was your unconditional, unfailing love for them, Dana. You loved them when nobody else loved them. I had a young man that robbed me. He got out of jail. He had no place to go, and he lived with me, and then he got back into drugs, and he robbed me. He killed my Rottweiler. Came home from church one Sunday, and he said, Dana, man, they robbed us, and they killed Deborah. They killed her, man. Went upstairs and saw my Rottweiler lying in a pool of blood. And Yah spoke to me, and he said, that wasn't an outside job. That was him job. And I wasn't mean to him. I just told him, I really believe you did it. And I said, you can't live with me no more. So I gave him a computer to do some work. And I said, get your computer and all your belongings, the clothing, everything I gave him. I said, pack it all up. And I said, let me know where you want me to take you. I loved him, but I couldn't have him in my house anymore. And unfortunately, his choices and his lifestyle, I got a call about 6 months later that he had 6 bullets in his body. He no longer had use of his body from his neck down. And he had nobody else to call. When he got out of prison and he went to go to his mom's house, she had packed up and left. And that's why he ended up coming and staying with me. And I went to the hospital to visit him. Went to visit Isaiah. I didn't condemn him. A lot of people said, yeah, see, God got him back. I said, no, God didn't get him. His choices brought him to that place. And because he was so hopeless, I got a call from the hospital about 6 months later that he had died. And nobody was there to claim his body. So his body was taken to the Cook County morgue. And sometimes they lay in there for years and years and years until they'll take him out and put a mass grave. There's thousands of bodies that are not claimed. Sometimes they're stacked 6 on top of each other. And that's where Isaiah ended up going, and I don't know where they ended up disposing of his body. But Yah really spoke to me and said what transformed the lives of the kids you were in was your unconditional love for them. Even when they did you wrong, you still loved them in spite of. And that's why One Love Society.love is a movement where I want us to speak the truth of who you are, but do it also in a way that loves and builds them up. So I am looking for individuals that would love to join the movement. I have little T-shirts. The movement can take its own course. It could be where individuals of you join POPs and you reach out to people and you bring them and you serve them. It's not a church. It's something that joins what's already happening. So for me, my one love is an inner city mentoring program. It's like a gang. We have a logo. We have colors. We have a handshake. We have a motto. And so when the guys join it, it's like they're joining a gang. Gangs are not bad. They're incredible institutions. They've just gotten into the hands of the enemy because those that are in the gangs don't know their true identity. So they're looking for identity, and the enemy has put their identity in a gang where they die. Look at the kids. We celebrate their death. When a kid dies, their parents and family members that would always tell them, get away from me, I'm sick and tired of what you do. But when they die, they spend thousands of dollars on T-shirts with their pictures. And they spend money on celebrating their life after they're dead. What happened if we made T-shirts of these kids and celebrated their life while they were still living? You know, I've got a bunch of guys right by my house, and early this spring as I drove through, I said, Lord, how many of these guys won't be here by the fall? 3 of them are already gone. So what happens is you hear the gunshots. I walk over there, the blood, the body's laying there, tears. Then you have the teddy bears and the posters and the candles and the tears. And then you have the alcohol to take away the pain. And that young man's life and his reputation and his legacy was for what? Now the blood stain is still kind of there on the sidewalk. The candles are all broken and burnt down. The posters are all, after the rain. Everybody goes on and that person's forgotten. I want to do a movement where we take a gang like Fellowship. And so with the kids, when they're in this group One Love, I give them an ID to carry. And with that ID, then I go to the neighborhood where they're at and I ask them that they would give me names of some of the stores that they go to. I go to those stores and I say, I got a group of young men that are choosing to the best of their ability to stay in school, get good grades, and make positive choices. Therefore, if a young man comes in here with a photo ID that says One Love, what type of incentive will you give that young man? It takes a village to raise a child. So I'll have stores that say, man, if they come in here, we'll give them 10% off their purchase. I'll go to a Foot Locker, and they might give them 15% off on their shoes as a way to say, we appreciate you for making the right choices. On the back side of the card, I put my phone number, and I put phone numbers of other men that are willing to receive a call from this kid if he gets into trouble. I don't care if you did wrong. Call us. We'll be there to defend your rights. But I want you to be honest and say, Mr. Stevens, I did wrong. But I'm going to make sure they treat you with dignity and respect. We all make mistakes. I got your back. Yes, you might have to face some issues, but I got your back. I'm going to protect you from them beating you or shooting you or hurting you. But then I'm also there to protect. And I go to the police officers and say, if you see some kids walking and your officers want to go up there and start harassing them, if they show your officers that they have this ID card, will you tell your officers, leave them alone? Just leave them alone. Or if you're doing something that you think is inappropriate or not healthy, tell them to call me on the back and I'll come and I'll be a liaison to protect you from being blown up in the news that you shot somebody innocently, but to also protect my kids. That's part of One Love, is an inner city mentoring type of program. And it doesn't have to be inner city. It can be a bunch of kids that are doing right, to give them some type of identity. They can carry. I mean, when I give them those IDs, They walk around like, yeah, I got this ID. And then all of a sudden, other kids are coming. They want to be a part of something. That's why gangs aren't bad. It's just the actions they resulted to is bad. Not because they're bad people, but because they live in a society that has devalued them. I can't blame the kids for being a product of a society. I want to get in there and break that society devaluing of them and let them know who they are. So One Love could be a group of men at your work. One Love could be a group of ladies. And they decide, so then with One Love, every, maybe 3 months or something, we go out and we would do feed the homeless, or we would do something of a charitable type of thing, to build empathy and love and concern for others. So the movement is something like that. And see, what I want to do is one day I saw this vision that it would almost be like a sorority or a frat club, where we will have members, and this is kind of what we all stand for. But it would be tweaked amongst you guys. So how it takes formation with you will be different than where it is here. And, the south side of Chicago might be doing this, but the north side might be doing this. It might be a bunch of businessmen and women that are very wealthy that are like, hey, part of our thing is we're going to get the resources to help fund and work out some of these other programs. We cannot rely on the government to take care of kids or people they hate. So we have to rise up together.